welcome to the presentation. At first, let me introduce myself. I'm working for a bank for 6 years, maybe six more years, but I grew up in, I would say, open source community. So I'm personally committed to the principles of the openness, innovation, and all the principles which are related to the open software. Before I started my bank career, I spent a lot of years in telecommunication, in telco, and for my personal hobbies, I would say, retired amateur hockey player. I'm teaching little children how to skate on ice skates. I'm organizing or co-organizing event called Bratislava Inline. It's the inline skating on Fridays, maybe you know that. And of course, as retired ice hockey player, I'm playing golf. Last year, and I like woodworking. Today I will talk a little bit about history of open banking in Slovakia, or maybe in Europe. Then I will go directly to the limitation of the PSD2 regulation, how to move from the PSD2 to open banking and what does it mean. And at the end, I will show you what we as a bank can provide to you or to your customers. Great, it worked. So at the beginning, as I said, I will use Slido for some polls. So use hashtag open banking in Slido. And I would like to know your association with the word open banking. What does it mean for you? What do you imagine if you hear the word open banking? In fact, PSD2 implementation in the bank was my first project, so I'm with this topic for almost all the 6 or 7 years, and I went through all the stages or various stages of the association to the open banking. At the beginning, it was big question mark. Then, for my open source geek, it was opportunity. For me as a banker, it was threat. Now I have a feeling it's a joke. So what does it mean for you? Transparency. Great. To be honest, I didn't get that association. Less restrictions. New business. Direct transaction. Third-party integration. Decentralized. Availability. I'm like that I don't see their words PSD2 because it's not an open banking. For me, so as I will speak about open banking, I would like to align all the people on the same line. So at the beginning, it was the PSD2, which is the legislation or regulation which ensures to the finance providers to expose their services to the APIs in a regulated way. So not everyone can use it, just registered party, which needs to pay quite a lot of money for the license to the regulator. Beyond that, there is open banking, which is, let's say, built on the top of PSD2. So it's not a regulation, it's the opportunity for banks to expose many of their services or almost all of the services through the APIs, in fact, to anyone. Not for public use, you have to register, maybe you have to create a contract with the bank, but almost anyone can use that APIs. And beyond that, there is a term open finance, which make the scope quite wider. So not only banks has to expose or need to expose their APIs, but also other financial institutions such as insurance companies and so on. If we are speaking about the open banking, I'd like to know how many accounts do you have? Because PSD2 or open banking is mainly about that you want to concentrate all your finances on one place. Or this was, in fact, the goal of the PSD2. So how many accounts do you have? Me personally, to be honest, I like to see what our competition is working on. So I'm using maybe 6, maybe 7 accounts. To be honest, I don't know and my wife hated it for me. But she is quite conservative, so she has only one account in bank, and she don't want to change it. I also have a friend who forgot left the banking system. So at least they are saying that all their assets are in crypto, so they don't have any bank account. And okay, let's see. We have 26 responses, 2 to 3, one for mortgage, other for daily use. Okay, so it seems that multi-bank or open banking or PSD2 is directly for you, because now you are not able to see or not only to see, but to manage your finances within your existing bank account. So what's PSD2 about? PSD2 means that you as a customer give the permission to the certified third party, TPP called in that context, to access your financials in your name. Your financials in your name means that you can execute, or the third party can execute payments from your account, can see the account balance, and can see the transactions you have performed. So in this picture, you can see that through one application, one device, you are able to see all the your financial information in all the banks. If I will come back a little more to the start of the PSD2, PSD2 was approved by the European Commission something about 2015, and I would say that this regulation is quite general. So even the start of the PSD2 regulation enforcement was understood differently in several European countries. So for example, Czech and Slovakia understood the regulation that it has been put in force since 2018. So that means that the banks need to expose their APIs. But for example, when we've been discussing this with our Italian colleagues, they understood that since 2018, it's only the screen scraping technique which can be used for the access for the or the screen scraping technique is sufficient to access your account. So what's the screen scraping? Screen scraping is a technique which was used by the payment providers, so not the banks, but the companies who can provide to you payment services. And it means that some system, some application fill the information within the internet banking instead of client automatically. So it has several limitations, like you need to give to the third party, not certified third party, just some different company, you need to give them credentials from your internet banking. If the internet banking layout has been changed, it meant for the third party that they need to reconfigure their application for the filling of the information. And as you gave them your password to the internet banking, it meant that they cannot only access your or execute the payments from your account, but in fact they are able, or they have been able, to see all the information which is part of the internet banking. So this access was really hard to distinguish for the access of the end user or of the client. So if a client has complained that someone executed payment order for 500 euros and it was not me, we as a bank were not able to prove that this payment was executed by the third party or this payment was executed by you as a client. So this was, let's say, the first use case, the first problem which is going to be solved through the PSD2 regulation. But this one use case means that also the scope of the APIs which should be provided to the third party is related to that use case. So at the beginning, it was a discussion that, okay, third party providers needs to execute payment, to see if the balance has been changed, so the payment was executed, and then transaction history to ensure that the payment which has been executed by the third party has been debited from your account. Of course, there is also introduction of the, let's say, strong customer authentication to be sure that the payment or the operations on your account has been performed by the, or is approved by the client. And as I said, PSD2 regulation is quite general, so there was no standardization for the APIs. Every bank could implement it in a own different way. So it raises in a fact that a lot of countries have started to develop their own standard. For example, within the Slovak Banking Association, we have created the Slovak standard. In Czech Banking Association, they have created the Czech standard. There was a group of entities which has been created Berliner standard. Polish guys has their own standard. I think there was also the French standard, and of course the UK standard. So let's go to the PSD2 limitations. As I said, the scope of the APIs has been limited by the use case which has been used. So in fact, what you can do as a third provider, which use cases, is just use case which has been initiated by the payment providers, so you can execute payments. Maybe you can make some analytics on your transactions, and you can see the balance. Another problem are the authentication issues, because yes, PSD2 has introduced strong customer authentication, but as every, I would say, authentication, it's usually limit the user experience. So this is something which third party already complaining that the authentication is too complicated, and it make the use of PSD2 services, let's say, unusable. From the bank perspective, as we as a bank are holding or are accountable for your finances, we need to strictly, let's say, enforce this authentication, because it's like that some third party or some person will come to the bank and will say that I have a paper with rounded stamp from the regulator, then I can execute payment from account of Tomas Hornicek. And we as a bank, in ideal world, shouldn't complain about that, just execute the payment. So what we are doing is that we are calling to Tomas Hornicek, hello, this third party is asking for execution of the payments from your account. Do you agree? Yes, I am. So from the bank perspective, it's quite safe. From the third party perspective, it's quite complicated because there is a call to the customer. The customer is there is a problem that you need to call customer. We as a bank has started some proof of concept for the multi-bank application. It was before COVID, maybe in 2018, 2019, to prepare application which will be able to connect to the Slovak banks. It has some cool features like advanced analytics on the transactions, notifications about payment which has been not executed, but in history, in the time usually you have executed that. And in fact, we have been facing the same problem as the third parties who are now complaining that we are making obstacles for them. It was an application called Multibank. If I remember correctly, it was the bronze medal in faculty competition, and I really liked it because at the time, I have maybe 8 accounts, so I think it would be very useful. But it was just a proof of concept, which for me ensures that the PSD2 as a regulation, as a driver for innovation, is not the way how we should do. the result of the PSD2 is that now there is a competition, or maybe I would say the battle between the fintechs and banks. On the one hand, fintechs want to create some services for the client. On the other side, there is a bank. As there is no standardization, each features of the PSD2 is understood differently, and the communication is like that. Third party will ask national bank that they have problem with specific behavior of the APIs in specific bank. Then national bank will ask the bank and start the investigation. Why is it? If it's possible to change. So maybe in 6 months you are able to get, let's say, the proper implementation of the feature you have requested. It cannot work like that. From the bank perspective, the main problems of the PSD2 is that for banks now it's cost only. We had to implement infrastructure which needs to be available 24/7. We need to operate it, make upgrades, but we have single cent of revenue for that. So for us, it's just a cost side. Then we have limited motivation for the innovation in the payments, because every innovation in payment which is available through the electronic channel has to be provided also to the third party automatically. Again, without any cent or euro for that. And as it doesn't have any standardization, we are spending a lot of time discussions with the third parties who are trying to connect to us, because they just understand our documentation differently. So we have usually about 20 or 30 emails daily, which needs to be investigated, answered. Probably sometimes it raises the change request for the implementation. From the perspective of the third party, authentication issues, I already mentioned that, because there is a redirect to the client, even for the passive operation, it breaks their user experience. There are some limits on the API. So if the third party is accessing your account without your participation or the initiation, they can make it just 4 times per day. So they cannot have, let's say, the replication of the transactions in real time, but they can ask for the transaction history just 4 times per day. Then there is also the lack of API standardization. So as we as a bank needs to communicate with the third parties to solve their request, they need to build a tunnel to the bank with each bank. And of course, the list of available APIs, as the regulation specified, there are only these 3 or 4 use cases which are going to be solved by the regulation. They don't have a huge, let's say, opportunity to create new services for the customer, because in fact, what they can do is just another internet banking, which is conclude the information from the banks. Maybe they can make some advanced analytics on the transaction, but that's all. From my perspective, I think that PSD2 revision, which should be in fact in Q4 this year, is not a solution, because it will not solve any of the, let's say, root causes of the PSD2. For example, on the bank side, this cost side. And I believe that innovation which is forced by the regulation cannot make customer happy, because it will not bring huge value for him, because all the time the regulation is, let's say, is following the trends. So each time when there will be some new innovation, it needs to be reflected in the regulation, and it take not months, I would say years. What is the key for me is the cooperation between the banks and the fintechs. this can work. I will talk now a little bit about what can we get from the use of APIs. We can use API as a product. So it means that we will provide our APIs to the third parties, and they will pay per use. So we directly can have some revenue, which will solve the cost side of the bank. Then we can use API as an enabler. So we, as a bank, can be in a role of the third party and use another APIs, which can be also beneficial for us and also beneficial for the client. Or we can use the API as a channel. So we will expose our services to the third parties who will provide them to the client. So this is the theory. Now I have another question for you because I speak a little bit too much. So give me what's the factor, most important factor for you when you are deciding which bank will you use. Is it the electronic banking? Is it the internet banking? Or it's the interest rate? Or it's the fees? Or maybe it's maybe it's the name of the bank, it's their advertisement. What's important for you to choose your bank? We have 7 answers so far, so I will wait a little bit. And now we can see that, in fact, it's not the electronic banking. So you or someone who has a company and would like to benefit on the PSD2, this multi-bank application probably will not generate enough revenues for him because it's not a key differentiator, or maybe I don't know how the people are willing to pay for that. He needs to bring them another value, much bigger value, and this value cannot be achieved with existing PSD2 APIs. So from PSD2 to open banking, let's forget PSD2, let's forget regulation, and let's concentrate on the open banking. So as I mentioned, open banking is something which is built on the top of the PSD2. The only advantage I see for the PSD2 is that they enforce banks to implement the API gateways, which are used for the exposure of the APIs. So they are able, now they have the capability to expose their services to the third parties. We need to see that providing of internet banking or multi-bank application is not a core business for the banks. Banks are generating revenue on different things. So in fact, we are not competing to the fintechs. Our competitor is another bank, not the fintech who will, let's say, use our APIs. From our perspective, the third party can be a channel which will expose our services as a bank to clients, to much wider clients, or maybe the fintech will create some new great product which will be beneficial also for our clients. And we as a bank can also, for this third party, prepare APIs which are beyond the PSD2. So you as a fintech can come to us, say that, okay, I have new idea for a product which can be sold to, for example, your customers. I just need different API. And we can agree that, okay, we can build that API for you. So what we as a bank can bring to you, so what are the services we are already providing or we are able to provide in short term? For example, we can expose to you notifications about the account movement through the Kafka. So it's not necessary to call the payment status API to get the information if the payment was executed, but we can notify you real time. Maybe it's not interesting for the retail client because they already have such a feature. They will get a push notification or the SMS about the account movement, but maybe it could be interesting for merchants, or it can be interesting for corporate customers. We can provide ATM or branch locator. This is something what we already have implemented. We are using it in our internet banking. Maybe you, as a fintech, has an idea how to leverage or how to make revenues on that information. We can provide loan or mortgages calculators. We can, through the API, connect ERP system of the corporate client. So, for example, I don't know if you have SAP and you need to execute payments. For now, you are making, let's say, mass payments through the file, or someone from the company needs to go to the branch. They will scan the payment orders and then execute mass payment. We can integrate directly the ERP system. Of course, it's not a core business of the bank. So if the fintech can do it instead of us, it will be beneficial, and he can get also some revenues on that. We can provide the APIs for the exchange rates conversion. We already are using such a capability internally, so we can quite easily expose it to you. We can make know your customer regulation for you, because we have to do it for our clients, so we can expose it also to the different party, which doesn't need to bother with the regulation, because it's not there for business. It's just the regulation. We can provide you identity as a service. We are able to authenticate clients or non-clients with their electronic IDs. If you need such a feature, you don't need to develop it. You don't need to discuss with the authorities how to implement it. We can provide it to you as a service. Or IBAN payments validation, something which we as a bank needs to do. You don't need to implement it. You can use just our services. Or maybe we can do some customer solvency check for you. Of course, customer needs to get consent, but if you need that information, you can ask that, and customer can approve it. But these services are beyond the PSD2, so they will not be provided to you for free. But we can agree on the revenue model. Maybe the revenue model can be that VUB customers can use your product for free for 1 year. I don't know. It's just the discussion, the cooperation between the bank and fintechs, which can bring some new services to the customers and can create bigger value for them. Now, if you have any idea how to bring better value for the customers, or maybe you are a student who is looking for a part-time job and would like to, let's say, work on such interesting things like exposing the bank services to the third party, or maybe you are a developer, or maybe you are a fintech owner and you would like to start cooperation with some bank, don't hesitate. Go here, or write me an email, or scan the QR code, which will bring you to some form, some contact form, where you can also leave the feedback for me, and we can start a cooperation. Don't hesitate. Banks are not dinosaurs. You can ask them. Any questions?
Thank you very much. That was Tomas Hornicek. Thank you.
35 minutes.
Yes, perfect. I have a question. What do you? Who should start this change? Who should start building the API? Who should be the leader in opening the market for this?
From my perspective, it should be the fintechs, because we are enabler for them. We can create the APIs, but it's not our core business. So probably we will not start with the ideas how to prepare the products for the client, because we are on this lending, mortgages, and so on stuff.
And why didn't anybody do it yet? What do you think? Isn't it like too hard? Is it maybe why would some bank join? Because if it's a fintech, I would need. For me, the best would be to have all the banks, not just VUB Banka. So I'll come to VUB Banka and I'll tell you I want to do this. You tell me, okay, yes, and I will have to tell you I'm going to Sporitelnia and Tatra Banka also, and you go like, we don't want that. And and the fintech is okay, I have Banka and nothing else. So my core business is only Banka.
It depends on your product. If your product is multi-bank, then okay, you need to go to every bank. And there are already some companies which are dealing with that like this, that they come to every bank, create the APIs, tunnels to every bank, and then they are able to providing multi-bank capabilities. But if your product is, let's say, not related to the multi-bank, it's just related to, I don't know, if I had the idea, probably I will develop a startup and will connect with the bank, but I don't have.
Yeah. But where do you think? Why do you think nobody is doing that? Why do you think nobody has any big business?
I think they are too strictly concentrated on the PSD2 because it's for free. So the fintechs already paid some amount of money for the license, and if they should pay another money for the connection to the bank, it might be too much because you don't have any revenues yet. So I think this is let's say the main obstacle.
Because I'm using a invoicing system for years now, and like a month ago they are like, you want to connect to a bank and we will tell you which invoices have been paid. And I'm like, wow, finally in like 2018 the PSD2 started. Yeah. So it took them 4 years to do this. So I don't know if there's a problem somewhere. So I can't figure out where the problem is. So I need to be on camera both. So I just realized that. Okay, anybody has any question? Put it on the Slido. Yes, go.
No, because it needs to be with the permission of the customer. So at least customer at the beginning, at the onboarding, needs to have some information that, okay, we will share your information with the following parties for the following purposes, and he needs to approve it. Customer is since PSD2 has been enforced, customer is the owner of the data, and he decides who can read it.
Does he have to decide individually, or if I sign with Banka somewhere, I saw some small print that, okay, you can give my data to anybody? Okay, so it has to be. Okay, more questions? We have 2 more minutes. Okay, I have some questions. So, what would you say if I came to you? Would you be open to doing this? You say you work for open data and everything. What would you say if I want to do one of these use cases? Whatever, I want to use your customers' info to identify them at some other sites. Would you go for that?
I would say yes.
You will say yes?
I'm not the decision maker, but I would say yes. And we already in the discussion with some of the fintechs about that. But to be honest, the discussion is quite low from my perspective.
But why? Because of the bank or the fintech?
Yeah, I would say both sides, because they are too concentrating on the multi-bank approach, and
of course you want to have like everybody on board. Like
I know,
and you're just a secondary bank.
I think the fintechs are too concentrated on or have the PSD2 in mind. So the new products are still related to the use cases why the PSD2 has been implemented.
So what we should remember from your speech is that PSD2 was a mistake, and if it wasn't here, maybe everything would be running faster?
No, if the PSD2 wasn't here, then probably we are not talking about the exposing of the APIs.
You think so? Don't you think the companies would want to do something and then push it harder and then do more stuff?
No, because in corporate world, the exposure of the APIs to the corporate customers has been before the PSD2. But it's really the individual discussion. And as I'm coming from the telco world, the exposure of the APIs was quite usual years ago. Banking is more conservative, so it's missing there.
Okay. Thank you very much. This was Tomas Hornicek from BOB Bank.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.